Hey guys, so I'm reviewing Serge Lutens fragrance Chergui, and let me first tell you why Chergui and why now. It's a very well-known fragrance, and there are plenty of reviews on it. But I like to review fragrances when I am in the mood for them. So I might wear something and just particularly enjoy it at a particular time and feel like reviewing a fragrance. And that's what happened with Chergui. I had a sample of it for a while, and I recently, what happened was I purchased two other Serge Lutens fragrances because I found good deals on them. Then it got me thinking, and I went back to sampling Chergui, which I sampled a long time ago and I didn't like actually. But since then, my taste has changed, and so I wanted to go back to it, and I absolutely loved it. And I think that just goes to show, depending on where you are in discovering fragrances, when you come back to a scent, you may actually enjoy it and understand why other people love it as well. That said, I don't like falling for the hype, but I do think that Chergui is one of those artistic, unique fragrances that, for the right kind of person, a more connoisseur taste, also, it is a really, really good creation. So I've got this 5 ml decant here. I got it a while ago from Scent Split, but with a bunch of other samples. And it's gonna, take a while for me to get through this, but I do want a full bottle of Chergui. I do think that for me it is gonna be worth it. So, a couple things about Chergui. Chergui, the name is actually, you may already know this, the Arabic name for a wind that blows easterly, coming from the Sahara desert, and it blows over Morocco, probably other regions as well, but Morocco, and that's the inspiration for this fragrance, a hot, dry air blowing through Morocco. I think apparently Serge Lutens has kind of a special connection to Morocco, really likes that place. And I've never visited, but it's always been on my radar and always been on my list of places to go eventually. Marrakesh, for instance, because there's something, I don't know, for me, romantic about that country and just that atmosphere, this kind of desert atmosphere. And I think there's a romance about it that's captured in Chergui. So I would say that this is actually a slightly challenging scent. It's not the most challenging niche scent, definitely. I'm sure there are people who like it on the first sniff, but like I said, I didn't like it. And we'll get into that, but it was a bit medicinal for me. And some people talk about scents like Diorum Intense as being sort of for a little bit of a more mature nose. I would say this is a notch above that in terms of catering to fragrance lovers. But again, not quite, the most exotic scent, but a little bit exotic enough to turn, some people away. But anyway, this is, talked about as a tobacco fragrance. And of course, on Serge Lutens' website, the official notes aren't listed, but the notes that you'll hear about are tobacco and leaf and hay and honey, as well as rose, surprisingly is mentioned quite a lot too. I would say that if you're looking for a more easy to wear tobacco scent, then Parfum de Marly Herod is still, in my opinion, one of the best, just because of that added sweetness and the incense, making it a little bit sharper, and not as dusty or bitter smelling. Now let's get into Chergui. The opening is where I feel it's the most medicinal. Yeah, and it's because it's got this very, very strong grassy smell, and I think that, knowing the backstory of the fragrance, they do a really good job, really capturing that image of a hot, dry air blowing right across the desert. But that said, that, if I hadn't known that, the kind of impression I get actually is a little bit of a barnyard kind of smell. That's one sort of variation. So it's because there's kind of an undertone of woodiness. Overall, it feels like a very deep, rich amber scent, but there's this undertone of woodiness and a dustiness and a slight animalic touch that overall kind of create this country vibe. And another kind of image that I get from the scent is, of course, there is a prominent tobacco-like note that kind of is the most forward in this scent, along with the honey-like sweetness. And so I get the feel of like smoking a pipe tobacco on the prairie, because again, it's got this overall grassy flavor that's slightly sweet and very, very deep and resinous at the same time. And of course, smoky. So that's what I get in the opening. And the reason why, when I first tried it for the very first time, I didn't like it was because it has this medicinal tone. I think it's because of this bitterness mixing with the sweetness. And sometimes when amber fragrances do that for me, I realize that it can give off the smell of a kind of a cough syrup. And in this case, mixing with maybe like a cannabis-like smell. So very, very, drug-like in that sense, like sweet, but just kind of herbal at the same time, or shrubby. Shrubby is sort of the best word. A dry kind of tree-like scent that's a little bit dirty and dusty. That said, what you get in the dry down several hours later is, it gets progressively, for me, sweeter and more candied, and the honey really comes up. And so it turns more into a gourmand-like scent in the dry down, but not one that's really, overpoweringly sweet. And that's what I like about this scent. It's a really warm, cozy, fuzzy kind of scent. The opening, if you've never experienced a scent like this before, might be a little bit challenging, but just know that you do get a transition as it dries down. It's one of what I really like about this scent is I found it I found that I was enjoying this scent a lot longer than I do many other scents, because many other scents, even if there is kind of a difference between the opening and dry down, sometimes that change is really abrupt, right? So you get one thing in the opening and then another thing in the dry down. And in this case, it's got this, and this is not the only fragrance, of course, that does this, but it's got this very, very like slow, gradual transition in the scent profile, where it's almost not noticeable as it's happening, but then you realize several hours later, oh, it's kind of a different scent. It's lost that cherry-like sweetness, and it's turned more into the honey, and then of course the core of amber, less of the kind of dry air smell that you get in the beginning. I think you get that mostly in the earlier stages. And so it's one of those scents that kind of just glides, and we talked about the opening. In the mid, another way to sort of think about this fragrance is, actually, this is kind of my favorite part, where it still retains that dry air-like quality. And so it's almost like the experience of smelling the smoke of something itself. So the smoke, it's not like you're smelling an essential oil or fragrance. It really smells like you're smelling smoke in the air, and like a sweetened smoke. A lot of people actually mention this rose note that they detect, and I'm not sure if it's it's actually used as an ingredient, but I see what they're referring to. And for me, it's the slightest kind of rosy nuance that is more like a cherry sweetness that I kind of described before. That kind of that rosy tone is also contributes to slightly that medicinal quality in the beginning, just because of this kind of new and odd mixture of ingredients, honey and rose and the hay-like accord. But then, it also adds this kind of elegance and mysteriousness, because you smell it smells more natural. It's like you're smelling the flowers among the grassy environment. I think in the middle stages, because of this rose-like note, it does resemble a little bit Dior's Ambre Nuit, but I would say Ambre Nuit is a lot brighter, more sparkling, whereas this again is darker, mysterious, more muted, and Chergui is a much drier scent overall. So anyway, I think this is a great like 3-season fragrance, and you could even wear this in the summer, as long as not super hot and you don't mind wearing slightly sweet fragrances. but it's a really, really interesting kind of transportive scent again, and that's, you know, my favorite kind of fragrance. So anyway, there's my review of Chergui for you guys. I'll do some more Serge Lutens reviews as I bought some, and I'll see you in the next reviews. Bye.